Morning. I'm humbled and honored to be here today to speak to you about my passion, which is the intersection of future of work and the future of learning, which, here's the punchline, I think it's the same thing. I'm going to take you through a rapid fire talk. I do use PowerPoint, but it's all visual, so hopefully it will be helpful to you, about the changing context of the future work. I'm first going to talk to you about what is happening, why it matters, and then how we need to think differently because of it. So when we look at what is happening, I have the very good fortune of being friends with Thomas Friedman, the New York Times columnist, and he and I have spoken a lot about the future of work. His latest book, Thriving the Age of Acceleration, Thank You for Being Late, he says that we have 3 exponential changes happening at once. We've got a change in technology, which we heard a lot about that in the last panel. We've got a change in the market. So where we were once connected, then we became interconnected, now we're interdependent. And a change in the climate. So we once had the opportunity to fix that lake or change that behavior related to climate change later, we now have to do it now. And those 3 things together are reshaping our world across 4 dimensions. How we work and how we learn to prepare for work and how we learn as part of work. Our geopolitics, our community. I've heard a lot of people in my time here on the horse and buggies talking about the loss of not getting Amazon. It's no longer time to wait for one company to come save your town. It's time to think differently. Ethics, which Tom and I disagree on. I think ethics goes across everything. He thinks it's a separate bucket. And then collectively, because of what he talks about, he says it's changing politics. It's no longer left and right. We're talking about a completely different thing. He thinks we should look at systems of nature, and systems of nature look at how can I be resilient to change, and how can I have propulsion. Propulsion is not only bouncing back, it's bouncing forward. So I focus all my attention on the end there on work to learn, but I agree with his overall framework, and I think it's helpful to understand what's happening. So we're moving from linear to exponential change. Linear change, the Singularity University describes it as steps. So if you went 30 linear steps, at the end of that, you'd be 30 meters. If you go 30 exponential steps, where each step is double the prior step, at the end of that, anybody have any guess where you'd be? How far is 30 exponential steps? 1 billion meters, 26 times around the globe. And we're starting to be in that place where the steps get further and further apart. We're starting to feel that change. So the good news is human beings are adaptive, but human beings are adaptive on a linear pace. Technology is growing at an exponential pace. Technology is tools. Tools need humans. We have to keep that in mind. We are entering the 4th industrial revolution. Each industrial revolution is how we use talent and tools. First we had the steam engine, then electricity and mass production, computer and automation. And now we're entering the 4th, which is cyber-physical things. It's been described as when things wake up, when everything around you has some intelligence in it. In the last industrial revolution, which I think so many people are still stuck in, lunging at STEM skills to solve all of our problems, lunging at deep expertise as opposed to, I don't use the word soft skills because I think that's gendered. I think it's the uniquely human skills. Each industrial revolution happens faster and faster because each one is built on the prior industrial revolution. We couldn't have the 4th industrial revolution if we hadn't digitized a good portion of our economy already or a portion of our infrastructure. So we're also entering the 5th era in human history. And each era is a time span, but it's also how we value talent and how we use tools. So right now, if you look at the industrial era, we use tools for labor replacement. We could produce things more quickly if we used machines. In the information era, we use tools for cognitive reduction. So you had to learn a software package in order to use it. Now we're entering an era of cognitive augmentation, where we will learn from and with a tool. I think many of in time, we're between the industrial era and the information era and the augmented era, but many of our systems and our conversations are stuck between the industrial era and the information era. Our school systems still look like we're trying to turn farm workers into factory workers. So why does all this matter? In the old economy, you were educated in one band, you had career in another band, and you retired in it. And these were 3 distinct bands. Whether you went to university or not, Learning was that first part of your life. That's all you had to worry about. Then you got on the career job escalator, you retired, and frankly, you died a year later. That was actually by design. Bismarck figured out, I think only 7% of people collected early retirement the first year we had it. Success was to be properly codify and transfer the skills we needed in the workforce into that individual so they could go out and get on the escalator. A lot of our models are still stuck in this mindset. I think it now looks like this. Life expectancy is not 90 yet, but it will be soon. Education becomes learn. I use the word learn instead of education because education requires it implies an end state of being educated. Learning is continuous. Work becomes leverage of that learning, and they become overlapping bands. Retirement becomes longevity, and it looks a lot more like this to me. And the success criteria here is your ability to learn, your ability to be agile, your ability to adapt, and your agency. Agency is the opposite of hopelessness. So everybody says learn, learn, learn. I think there's an important factor in there that's lost, and it's the process of unlearning. It's letting go of the way you learned to do things originally as technology takes over more of what you do, takes over more for you, and learning new ways of doing things. So I think we need to retire this question. It's the first thing we ask kids. What do you want to be when you grow up? This is a statistic originally from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 1999 when they were looking at our economy eventually becoming digitized. I don't know if it's the right number, but a big percentage of the jobs that young people might have may not have even been invented yet. Someone mentioned on the earlier panel the Fry-Osborne study, 47% of work, not jobs, but tasks. That reshapes every job. And then I've worked in university where people make students become myopically focused on their major. Only 27% of people actually ever work in the field of their undergraduate major. So you're setting them up for failure and debt. And then what do you do? This is my least favorite question because I don't know how to answer it. But a study from the Foundation for Young Australians, which is the best study I've ever seen for the developed world on what the future may look like for young people, they suggest they'll have upwards of 17 jobs across 5 different industries. So if you're asking a kid what they want to be when they grow up, you're asking them what their major is, and we're walking around asking each other, what do? We're calcifying a mindset at a moment in time. A recent study came out that a loss of a job takes 2 times as long to recover from than the loss of a primary relationship. It's your entire identity. So how do we think differently? So Simon Sinek did this little talk. If you haven't seen it, I'll give you the quick recap of it. His intent was to say, I can help companies communicate more effectively and leaders communicate more effectively if they start with why. So every company can tell you what they do, what product or service they sell. Some companies can tell you how they do it, what makes them special, their intellectual property, their people, their process. But really great companies, he says, tell you why they do it. They have a driving purpose. And when Simon gave that talk, I think 12 years ago now, our change rate was a little bit slower. I think it's even more important now because as our change rate accelerates and products and services don't last as long, and business models get disrupted more frequently, you have to define yourself by why, not what. If you define yourself by what, you're more quickly out of business. So let's look at Apple. Apple, their purpose in everything we do, we challenge the status quo. We think differently. That grammatical error always drove me crazy. Process, how do we change the status quo? By making technology easier to use. Products, we make computers and electronics. This gives Apple the liberty to make a car, make a pod in your home, be part of the Internet of Things. Would you drive a car designed by Gateway? No. Would you buy a phone from Dell? Probably not. But it's given Apple the liberty to cross multiple industries. And if you take Amazon, can you imagine Barnes & Noble winning Academy Awards? But you can because Amazon did it. I think we have to take that very same approach with young people. Start with why. We need to reclaim purpose. Purpose and passion used to be the domain of just the elite. We cannot afford it not to be the domain of everybody. Purpose and passion is what is going to keep the lifelong learning candle lit. We go from there to talk about their superpowers. What are your unique capabilities? What are you good at? What do you want to do? And then we get to the what. The what is just the application of those things. So I use the analogy too, you have a phone, you have applications on your phone, you add and delete them, but the underlying operating system enables you to do that. And that's how we have to think about things, because that's going to allow them to traverse multiple industries. So I collectively call this a concept I have called the agile learning mindset. It includes learning agility, so learning, unlearning, adaptability, understanding your learning styles, uniquely human skills, you guys call them soft skills, but those skills such as creativity, communication, things that you cannot codify, things that will not be replaced by automation. Adaptability, how do you navigate ambiguity? How do you deal with change? And then agency. Marina Gorbis from the Institute of the Future of Work says as we close the digital divide, the next divide that will open will be the motivational divide. I think this is how we start to close it. So in our old model of education, you had learning conditions. They were only addressed if you had a major deficit. Then you had to learn foundational skills. Then you picked a domain expertise and you went up the escalator. I would now argue, I think it looks like this. We need to understand people's purpose and their learning conditions. How do you learn best? What kinds of things are you interested in? What barriers might you have when we talk about issues of inequality? Where a student can't learn if they're hungry, can't learn if they're scared, can't learn if they can't get to school. Then the foundation skills become portable skills. Teaching them how to apply them in different circumstances will help with adaptability. Domain expertise, it's not a one-time thing. You're going to have multiple careers. And then to me, the top of the pyramid is that learning agility, ability to learn and adapt. So I think the old model used to look like this, and that's why I call my consulting firm Work to Learn. We used to learn to do something in order to produce a unit of value. We're still stuck in that. The new model, I think, looks like this. We need to learn in order to continuously learn. Learning and work are a single act. The unit of value becomes a byproduct, and the focus becomes increasing capacity. If you look at a company like Amazon, since you did, to try to get it to come to Detroit, everything Amazon does is to learn. It's not about selling you anything other than that is a vehicle for learning. So if you look at the life blocks, and this Dick Bowles, who wrote the What Color Is Your Parachute, actually wrote this like 45 years ago. I've been using it for 2 years, not knowing that it was his concept. We used to have these 3 life blocks, and you move through it like this for about 73 years. Now, I think they turn 90 degrees, and work becomes engaged, learning becomes lifelong, and retiree becomes reconditioned, and we move, it's 90 years long, and we move through it like that. So for the people in the policy in the room, we need different policies. It's not one educational system versus another. It's how do we create an ecosystem that enables this to happen? So in summary, I'm optimistic. We have these 3 accelerations that are reshaping our world. We have to acknowledge them. The future of work, I believe, is learning. Have to start with purpose. As companies, as entities, as well as individuals, we have to build agency through understanding your purpose. If you understand your purpose, then you will continue to learn. And we have to focus on learning agility and adaptability. And that's why I call my company Work to Learn. Work in order to learn continuously. Thank you.